Welcome to all my travelers out there. I am your host, Darren Beckett, and this is the Global Travel Podcast. For those who do not know my travel resume, I've been to 13 states, 15 countries on 5 different continents, but it is not about me. Here, we are giving you quality travel tips, insights, and recommendations on all the best destinations for ideas to enjoy your vacations. With that being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. We are all clear for takeoff. Before we reach our destination, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, click the bell, and if you're going to do me a favor, if you can, go into the comment section below, type in the words, I got my ticket, and at the end of the show, I'm going to come back, I'm going to respond and see how your experience went with us, all right? So with that being said, on today's episode, we are taking a trip to Seychelles. So make sure you got your passports, your earphones, and something to snack on. We have a very special guest here with us today, but before I introduce him, let me just say this. Now, this gentleman right here, he's been all over the world. I seen him on Instagram feeding giraffes. So he live in a very exotic lifestyle. He's been to 27 different states, 14 countries. So if Seychelles is on your list, you definitely want to pay attention. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Mr. Daniel Mann. What's going on with you, brother?
What's up? What's up? What's up? Thank you for having me.
Nah, no problem. Thank you for being here, showing some love and dropping some good travel knowledge for us today. Much appreciated. So, before we get started into the travels, before we hit this flight, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where you from? What you do for a living? All that hobbies, all that good stuff.
Sure. So, as you mentioned before, my name is Daniel Mann. I am a an avid traveler. I could say I'm addicted to travel at this point. I've only been really traveling internationally for about the last 2 years. So you could go back to February of 2018 and I didn't even have a passport, you
Wow.
know. So if you think about the fact that we're not even at the end of 2020 yet, and I've been to 14 different countries, that kind of speaks to what I just said about me being addicted to travel.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they say, the bug bites you and, it's from one trip to the next. But
Mm-hmm.
a little bit about me personally, I grew up in Michigan. A lot of people by default are like, oh, so you're from Detroit. Not quite. I'm about 2 hours away. And I'm actually from a really, really small town that probably no one's heard of called Albion, Michigan, which is about 2 hours west of Detroit. And it has like a population under 10,000. So
Mm-hmm.
we're talking small. And like one high school I grew up with, we had one middle school, 5 elementary. So, real small. And now my high school doesn't even exist, for instance, anymore.
Wow.
But yeah, just a really small pond, if you will. But yeah, from there I went on to college. I moved from Michigan to Ohio, attended the Ohio State University,
Buckeyes.
which I'm a very proud, alumnus of. They just won football game a minute ago, so I'm on cloud nine right now. But anyway, I moved from Ohio on to Pennsylvania, where I lived in Philly for a couple of years. And that's also where I went to grad school. And so I went to grad school, got a Master of Science in Technical Communication at Drexel University, graduated in 2013. And from there, I moved out to the Bay Area in California, is where I reside, currently situated between Oakland and San Francisco in a town called Emeryville. And yeah, right now, professionally, I actually work as a content designer. I'm not even going to go into everything that all entails because we could be here forever. We could have a whole podcast on that. But basically, I worked for Facebook actually.
Mm.
And so, as a content designer, when you log into, just as a quick example, when you log into Facebook and you have a login screen, right? And you see like there's a design, there's a certain look and feel to Facebook, right? You know what I'm saying? And so, think about the language that you see throughout the experience, like as you're navigating through certain flows. So for instance, login flow, right? It's like, it could say, hey Daniel, welcome to Facebook, right? And then it's like, click here to log in. So all of the messaging that you see directly within the app that speaks to you and lets you know what to do, that's what a content designer does. And so I'm one of the people who figures out where we need to communicate with users and what we need to communicate to users. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. But yeah, speaking and kind of jumping off from that, at Facebook, I have, we have really flexible time, and, PTO isn't really a thing. So anytime I need to take time off or want to take time off, I basically can do it. There's no, approval or anything like that. So, once I, identify a trip or, see a good flight deal and I'm like, oh, I got some days, there's no approval. The approval is me just putting in the tool and telling them I'm gonna be gone on X date from X date to X date. You know what I'm saying? So that's pretty much how it is. And I'm, obviously very blessed to be in that situation to where PTO and taking time isn't too big of an issue. But that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Nice, definitely. Yeah, man, I seen the IG post. I'm like, man, he over here living with giraffes and whatnot. I said, I like the lifestyle, man. I like the lifestyle. It's nice. So let's go ahead, man. We on this flight. Let's go ahead and take a trip. We have a little ways before we hit Seychelles, but what is the first? Let's stop in the United States since we're here. What is the first state that you would recommend that we can go to first?
Ooh, let's see. I'm gonna have to think about that because, being a Midwesterner myself, growing up, I pretty much stayed in the Midwest. And it wasn't really until, I reached adulthood that I really started to venture out when it comes to like domestic travel, for instance. But I would say Chicago. I would say Chicago.
Okay,
Because
let's go.
coming from the Midwest, Chicago is just like the hub. Like Detroit is a hub being in Michigan, but like when you think about the greater Midwest, it's really Chicago
Mhm.
as like that really big city. And especially for me coming from such a small town, it's just like going to Chicago is everything, for me whenever I had the opportunity growing up. But the reason I say Chicago is just because it's such a diverse city. They have so much to do, so much to eat, and so many different cultures to experience. And I have like even today, I find myself most of my domestic travel is to Chicago because most of my friends, regardless of like where I met them, some from college, some, growing up, like a lot of people kind of landed in Chicago, which makes it easy for me to kind of go there and be able to knock out, so many, kill so many birds with one stone. So it's really convenient for me. But I know that when I think about just like, all the museums and all the different types of restaurant. I mean, when I think of Chicago, it's hard to think about it without thinking about food and like the food scene. And so, yeah, I think for that reason, I think domestically that would have to be the spot for me.
So, okay, any particular restaurant, cafe, mom and pop spot, or culture of food that you recommend while we here in Chi-Town?
Let's see, that's a good question. So there's actually one place that I did frequent that has now closed actually, and it wasn't due to the pandemic.
Mm.
Um, I'm not sure if you're familiar, if anyone listening to this or watching is familiar with Chef Darius. He's a Instagram famous chef who, is just like, known for cooking for the culture and making some, bomb dishes that have a unique
Mhm.
twist to them. And he used to have a restaurant in Chicago, and he has two or had two in Atlanta. He closed all of them. But if I think about a genre of food, I would say, and this is pretty basic. Actually, I'll go with a specific restaurant. I'll say Harold's, just
Mhm.
because they're known for their fried chicken. I don't know how many people listening to this like fried chicken, but if you do, that's definitely a spot to go. They have different locations throughout the city, and yeah, they're just known for some good fried chicken.
I heard about Harold's actually, as a matter of fact. I don't know if you are aware of ET, the hip hop preacher, and his podcast, Secret to Success, but there's a guy on his team. I think Jamal King. He's from Chicago. He always talk about Harold's chicken. So you got to get Harold's chicken. So it's fried chicken. So if you into fried chicken, you want some good fried chicken, Harold's chicken is the place. Is it just Harold's? It's just called Harold's, right?
Yep, Harold's. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, just go to Harold's, man. Get you some good fried chicken. I think I've never tried it, but I've heard about it, so that's definitely on my bucket list. So okay, so what is there specifically to do? As far as I recommend, I know that you mentioned museums, but what would you recommend for folks to do while they're in Chicago?
Yeah, I would recommend going to the Navy Pier, going out by the water if you like nature, just like going on. They have like a trail that's along the water there that leads, I believe, from downtown Chicago through. Like you could kind of just walk along that. It'll take you up to the pier. But yeah, it's just like I think it's a good place to kind of stay. Like if you like to be physically fit or like to like just kind of like be outside and kind of just exercise. Like it's good for walking, it's good for jogging, like biking. Like there's so many activities like that you can do. Like again, like the museums, they have like a really good African American history museum. I forgot the name of it, but I remember going there. They have so much. For me, I'm big into museums because I like art. And anywhere I travel, I try to capture that, whether it be through Instagram post or whatever the case may be. I like to at least document that because I love seeing like art in different places. Most of the time, when I say art, I'm thinking more street art because I find that really fascinating just to see like street art in different places. Like for instance, this summer I went to Tulum with the whole herd of the Black coalition that went to Tulum this summer. I was one of the ones on the train. And I stopped in Playa del Carmen, and it was a place where I didn't really expect to see any street art, honestly. Like, I don't know why, but it didn't really strike me as that kind of a place. And then I got lost actually. Had to get out, had to, go to a restaurant, asking for directions. But through all of that, I actually ran into some fire street art. And like I stopped, took some pictures, and I was just really glad, even though in the midst of chaos, I was able to like identify that because I otherwise wouldn't have seen that. And so I don't know. I just think street art is just really unique, and it says a lot about the city or the place that the street art is.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely agree with that. So yeah, Chicago was fun, man. We had a chance to check out some street art. They got a lot of museums, African American museums, different type of museums. Get your nice little jog in if you're into that type of stuff. Get your exercise in, and then also don't make sure you make sure you don't forget to stop at Harold's, get you some good fried chicken. So
That's right.
Chicago was fun. Now, Daniel, let's go to another state. What other state do you think that would you recommend?
I gotta recommend California. That's where I'm at now, and I gotta recommend my state.
Yeah. So you're in Northern California. So what's the first thing that you recommend us? And since we touched down, we here, we ready to go. What's the first thing you recommend us to do while we here?
Okay, so if you're flying into the Bay, so coming into either Oakland or San Francisco, I definitely recommend hitting both places first and foremost. But if you're in Oakland, you got to hit up the Oakland Museum of the Arts. Again, like you'll notice a theme. I'm big into museums, but I gotta speak on that. Things have changed kind of due to right now COVID situation. There's not as much going on, so it's kind of hard to make certain recommendations. But before COVID, we had something called First Fridays also in Oakland, where every Friday it was like a big block party, like from about where like basically all around like the downtown area, where it's different restaurants that participated in it, and there are different deals, and they have music and different vendors selling everything from like clothing, food, and just all kinds of different things going on. And obviously it looks like it'll probably be a hot minute before we get back to that. But I would say that if you're in Oakland, one of the more popular places to be is the lake. That's where a lot of the melanated people tend to go, like on the weekends, or if anything's happening. They happen to have like a lot of like they have everything from like day parties on the lake. They have all kinds of events, like over the summer. Usually, like again, like before COVID, there were just so many different events. That was like the spot to have like those big events. They have something in February called the Black Joy Parade, which is just celebrating Black excellence, and they have music and food and vendors that takes place downtown as well. And let's see what else is there. You can hop over to San Francisco. San Francisco is right next door. It has its own things to do, places to see in its own right. There's a Fisherman's Wharf, which is iconic, and that's just like where there's like a pier. There's all this food, and you can get really fresh like seafood, and walking in, get some fresh crab. That's what I'm really into. So anytime I go there, I gotta get like a half a crab. You know what I mean? And I go there. They have Ghirardelli chocolate. They have you basically can walk in and get free samples of chocolate, but they have just like a restaurant involved. They have chocolate milkshakes. They have all kinds of chocolate, and anyone who knows about Ghirardelli chocolate, their chocolate is pretty top notch. San Francisco is also known for their sourdough bread. So there's the factory for that, and I'm forgetting the name, but there's a brand of sourdough bread, and there's a factory, and it's actually on the Fisherman's Wharf, and you can go there and you can see the bread being made, and it's fresh, and it has that aroma, and it's hard to be there even if you don't really like mess with sourdough bread like that. Like you just like, oh, I want to try some. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. Right. San Francisco is known for Lombard Street, which is the street that just is like, up on a hill, and it comes down, and it's just like zigzag all the way down. And it's like a famous Instagram shot. You can look it up. But that's another place people go. They have beaches. Even though, SoCal is more known for having that, California vibe that everyone thinks of when they think of California, there are beaches in the Bay Area as well. And so there's different beaches like Baker Beach in San Francisco. There are a number of other beaches, places to hike. I would say well, I don't know if it's a big difference, but I feel like in Northern California, people are a little bit more outdoorsy than they are in SoCal. And you'll see that represented in the things to do. Like, I mean, we're not far from, what is it? Lake Tahoe. And people go there, like that's a weekend trip for a lot of people. They go there. You can get a different vibe depending on what time of year you go. Like you could go and ski, with all the snow, because even though we're in California, like it's up at that level of elevation where there is snowfall that hits and you're able to do things like skiing. But then also in certain times a year, they even have clear water kayaking, which I'll get into a little bit when we talk about the Seychelles, because that was one of my favorite activities that I did when I was there. But to know you don't have to go abroad to do something like that is pretty cool, and that you can do that even, right here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, it's a lot to do in California in general. If you haven't been to the Bay Area, haven't been to NorCal, you definitely have to take that trip. It's a lot they have to offer, whether it's beaches and hikes and museums and lakes and good food, culture. There's just a lot going on. So if you haven't been to NorCal, put it on your list and definitely. So all right, cool. We've been to a couple states in the United States. Now let's go across the pond. We have a little ways before we hit Seychelles. So what is the first country you recommend they stop in?
Okay, so first country, and this I think is going to be dependent, but I can speak for someone who's like, is coming from the States and maybe more familiar with domestic travel. I think Canada is always a good option. One, because it's so similar, right? It's
Mhm.
so similar to America, where there won't be that culture shock, right? And at a certain point, you kind of work yourself up to that, where you're able to put yourself in different situations. But I do think a good place to start is Canada, because they are our neighbor. Right now, I believe they're currently closed to us, but I'm just generally speaking, and for when they do reopen,
Mhm.
I would definitely think to hit them up. I have early memories of going there, actually, even before I had a passport. Funny story, that may
Mhm.
even kind of speak a little bit to my age, but I remember growing up that we were actually able to go to Canada and just drive across the bridge from Detroit and just show our IDs, and bam, bada boom, bada bing, you in Canada, you in another country. You don't have a passport stamp or anything to show for it, but hey, you there.
Pictures, man. You got pictures to show for it. That's good enough right there. That's
that's
evidence.
that's right.
So what about okay, so I know when it comes to Canada, yeah, it is well, I haven't been yet, but from what I've heard, um, there is they do speak English or what have you, but they do have a French population as well. So French is also another language that they speak. Can you speak on the other type of culture that France has? Not France, Canada has.
Yeah. And so that's a good point that you raised, because I would say, for the most part, people speak English, and it's kind of like in, America, how you go to different regions within the country and people have a little twang to their speaking, you know what I'm saying? Like people kind of have like
Mm-hmm.
a different way of saying things or different words they choose. You'll kind of get that same vibe in Canada when it comes to the English. Like you will notice a few subtle differences if you pay attention. For the most part, they speak just like we do, but you'll notice them say things like process instead of process, right? Like that's one example
Mm-hmm.
right there. And so they're just like little things. Like I'll be watching a YouTube video that's on something like just completely random, and I'll like think, this person probably from like Cali or something like that, maybe New York. And then I hear them say process and I'm like, they're from Canada. So that's like a
Yep.
real
Yep.
interesting thing that, certain words can kind of trigger, and it's like, okay, I know you from Canada. But speaking back, oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, my bad. Just to pick back on that real quick. Another word, resource. We say resource. They say resource. So it's like a Z sound, like
Mm-hmm.
resource. I'm like, it's a little strange. That you from Canada, okay? But yeah, I just wanted to add that in. But yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead and continue what you was talking about.
No, that's a good point. I forgot about that one too. Yeah, it's a few other words like that too. But
Hmm.
yeah, back to what you were saying though about like the French aspect. I haven't been to this part of Canada yet, but I am curious to go. And that's like to places like Montreal and places like Quebec. That's where you'll see a lot more of the culture that you're talking about, where and like where people will speak French a little bit more than what may be used to or may see in places like Toronto or even Vancouver, for instance.
So what city were you in when you crossed over the bridge from Michigan?
Yeah, so when you cross over, you're in Windsor. Windsor is like really
Mm-hmm.
close to that border, but
Mm-hmm.
we never really stopped in Windsor. We would go on to Toronto growing up. So we used to just drive to Toronto. My dad was real random with it. He would just wake up, we'd be it'd be summertime, I'm off from school, he's off from work and different things like that. My dad will come in and be like, pack your bags, we're going to Toronto. And I'll be like, oh, okay, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But it was cool, you know what I'm saying? What I remember from Toronto, and I haven't been back actually since that time, like since growing up, which was years ago, but I do still remember like they had this castle. I don't remember what the name of it was, but I just remember it being so epic and just being able to run through it. And like, I don't know, I just thought it was the coolest thing. They also had this African spot that we stopped at, and the food was fire, chicken, all kinds of different stuff. And it was like a hole in the wall, is like oftentimes those restaurants are. But some of those hole in the walls, I'm telling you, they be having some of the best food. And I never forgot that. As long ago as that was, like, I don't remember the name of that place, but I remember that it was green on the inside and that chicken was fire. That sticks with you, because I'm a foodie. So like, food is something that will stay. If other things do drop, as we get older, we forget things, but like, that's one thing that tends to stick, like those memorable foodie experiences, even as a child, have
Mm-hmm.
stayed with me. And that was one thing I still associate with Toronto.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I love food from different places as well. Now, here is something called in Canada, they have something called a poutine. Have you ever tried that, or do you know what that is?
I have not actually tried that. And it's not because I haven't had the opportunity to, but for some reason, I don't feel like it will be something that I like, but I need to get over that and just try it so I can say that I tried it. I at least tried it, because I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to food. I'm not one of those people that's going to go all the way to the Philippines and order McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I do know those people, and it's just like, man, like, what's the point of you even taking that trip that you just went on if you just don't live like you live, in Washington, D.C. or whatever, wherever you're from. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I got to get over that and, bite the bullet and go on ahead and try it and see.
Yeah. So for those folks who do not know what a poutine is, may you describe what it is or what it all entails?
It's like these, like, what you call it, like, it's fries with like gravy over it and has like different things. I'm not exactly sure what's all in it. I just know that I've seen it, and it just like has that layer of gravy on the top. And then I'm just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. you know I would encourage you all that are listening to go ahead and try it. Whenever you have an opportunity to try poutine, you go ahead and try it. I'm gonna try to beat y'all to it, but I may not, but I would encourage you still to go ahead and order that poutine.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. That's what I heard. Fries with like gravy or maybe some cheese, or depending on how you make it or what part of Canada you're in. So make sure you guys try poutine. Go to different parts of Canada. Go to the French speaking areas, the Montreals, the Quebecs, and try to dive into a culture that's a little different than the United States. It's like Toronto, what have you, and really get to experience their culture. Their people out here is very, very friendly, and I've met personally in different places like cruises or different places in the world. Canada folks are definitely friendly. I can say that. So, all right, cool. Canada was a lot of fun. Now, what we still got Seychelles to go to, but before we get there, what other country do you recommend us stopping by first?
Okay, after Canada, guess I gotta go with the other border country, with Mexico. Um, I definitely recommend Mexico. My first memory, I've been to Mexico 3 times now. My first memory of going was also before I had a passport. It's funny how I'm going to these countries like How's it possible? Like at least I don't know if those things are possible anymore, but I know at least at that time it was possible to go to both Canada and
Mm,
Mexico without one because I did it. But I was on a cruise in college, in undergrad, and the first cruise, at least at the time, the way the rule was set up, you normally would need a passport if you were going on that type of cruise, like with the Caribbean and things like
mm-hmm.
that. But if it's your first cruise, or if it was your first cruise at that time, you just needed an ID and some other form of identification that they wouldn't, require your passport. But either way, I went to Cozumel. That was my very first experience. To be honest, I feel like cruises just aren't my thing. I didn't know that until I went on that, had that experience. But maybe it's that I'm not taking cruises in the right places. Like I feel like a cruise like around the Caribbean may not be the same, for instance, as a cruise in Europe or I don't know if they have cruises in Africa, but like, somewhere else, I think the experience could potentially be a little bit different in terms of the way it's set up and how touristy it is when you're
Mm-hmm.
actually on the cruise.
Mm-hmm.
But I did feel like that was a very, very touristy spot in Cozumel. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of defeated the purpose a little bit because I know there are so many different kinds of travelers out there. And so I can't say that it was good or bad for everyone because we're all different. Hey, some people, it's your thing to be in an all-exclusive resort for the duration of your stay and never step foot outside of that. And for you, that's fine. I applaud that. It's still travel. All travel matters. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
we all
I
have
like that.
different styles. And so I know my style. I'm really into the culture. And I feel like if I don't get that in a trip, I almost feel like I haven't been. And so Cozumel definitely didn't do it for me. It may do it for you though. So,
Mm-hmm.
but moving on from Cozumel, I've been to even just as recently as this year. People talk about, oh, with the pandemic, we can't travel, all that. Like, I actually went to Mexico twice this year.
Mm.
I went to Mexico in January. My birthday is in January, so it's about to be my birthday again. But
Mm-hmm.
I went to Mexico right before Seychelles, actually, literally right before. Like, got back, fell asleep, woke up, went back to the airport, and headed to the Seychelles. Like back to back. That's what I did. And so I enjoyed it. It was a quick trip. It was just like I went to Mexico City. It was quick weekend trip. My birthday is the weekend prior to MLK Day. So,
Mm-hmm.
at most jobs, like you get that day off. So it's kind of like a benefit in taking that weekend. It doesn't always fall on the weekend, but, it did this year. And having that extra day on Monday off, like, just kind of utilizing that. Like I'm strategizing, like, where can I go? Where
Mm-hmm.
can I go that's going to be like a different experience, but also isn't going to take me so far out that it's, I'm not going to be able to actually do anything. Like I felt like that hit a sweet spot for me and being able to like experience different things there. And Mexico City had a completely different feel, for instance, from Cozumel, like I was just mentioning, and even a different feel from Tulum and Playa del Carmen, which I went to more recently around August of this year. And so the reason I would recommend them as a place to go is because of the fact that, it's so close. A lot of people speak English, though they speak Spanish as well, obviously. I think a lot of us Americans who tend to know another language,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes that language is Spanish. It's either Spanish or French. Like there are people who know other things like Swahili and, all kinds of other Thai and all kinds of other languages, but those are a lot, more uncommon. But
Mm-hmm.
for those of us in the States, a lot of times, when we take our foreign language, it's either going to be French or Spanish. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for that reason, it's a good opportunity to kind of, if you're one who, maybe took a few classes in high school and, you may be a little bit rusty on it now, it's a good opportunity to kind of bring that back up. And that's what it's been for me. I haven't been, speaking Spanish on a day-to-day basis or, really keeping up with it. And I'm one who has lost a little bit of what I did learn at, when I took it in school. But there's something about being immersed in a place when you have that in you, you know what I mean? It helps to bring out things in you that you don't even realize that you have, you know what I'm saying? Like that you remember. Like it's crazy how like I went going into Spanish, I mean going into my trip to Mexico, I was like, man, I wish I knew more Spanish. Like I forgot a lot of stuff. And you know, just thinking about it, I couldn't reproduce it just like off the top of the head. But when I was in the environment, words that I used to know and different things like that came up out of nowhere. And that was such a gratifying feeling for me. Like, I can't even tell you how meaningful that was. And so, going with that, I'll say that's also why I tend to not favor, but just I have a soft spot for Spanish speaking countries because of the fact that I, you know, took Spanish as my foreign language requirement in school. And every time I'm in a place where Spanish is spoken, it brings up, like, calls back that to like my remembrance, and I'm able to like communicate, and that feels really special to me. And that's one of the I don't know, just one of the treasures of in traveling, when you're able to have those types of experiences. And so yeah, that's why I would recommend Mexico.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot, a lot of places you can go in Mexico. If you're not really into the touristy areas, then you know you may not want to do the cruise there, because that's the place where you do all the tourist stuff. So Cozumel, even Cancun, there's a lot of
Yeah.
touristy areas. But I mean, you know, for those folks who want more of the local vibe, Airbnb is probably the way to go. Stay with the locals, and then talk to the neighbors, and you just get that local vibe, that local feeling. So Mexico is definitely a place to go. And even in the pandemic, I know folks been traveling to Mexico, especially, you know, here from California, especially.
Yep.
And it's easy to get there. I hear good things. Matter of fact, I got a trip planned to Mexico in the next like month or so. So I'm about to, you know, check that out. But
Okay.
yeah, I hear that, you know, they're doing a good job as far as sanitation and what is it, hand sanitizers and wipes and Lysols, and you know, just keep making folks feel safe. So that's the key, so we can get back out here traveling again. So because I'm feeling homesick. I've been locked up in the home for about a year now. I'm ready to get out and go travel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's my sanctuary right there. So cool, man. You know, Canada was fun. We crossed the border there, got a lot of good value there, and then crossed the border to Mexico. So that was a good experience. Did a little cruise and whatnot. So now, man, we are officially landed in Seychelles. So welcome to all my travelers out there. We are off the plane. We stretching our legs, ready to hit the ground running. So Daniel, what is the first thing we should do while we're here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can depend on your situation. I can kind of just tell you what my experience was like as I like even getting to Seychelles, right? Like for me, so you know, I live in California, but I flew. Oh, I want to give a little bit of background on this too, because I think this is just an interesting thing that doesn't necessarily, it's not specific to this, but I think it's good to kind of make people aware of these types of deals, because Seychelles wasn't even in the plan for me when I went. I just want to call that out up front before we even dive in. Like, because I had just gotten back. So, for instance, like, it's a ritual for me every Thanksgiving, and it's fairly new ritual, but to you know, abroad every Thanksgiving. That's just been something I've been doing. So last year, I went to Thailand, and it was a week before I had gotten laid off of my last job, actually. And I had the trip planned, everything like that, got laid off, had the trip the next week, and I was just like, okay, I'm still going. You know what I'm saying? So it ain't no use of like, you know, sitting here licking my wounds or not. Like, I'm gonna go and live it up. So I went to Thailand, right? Came back, and then had no intentions, wasn't even looking for a place, you know, to go after that. But I'm a member of several Facebook Black travel groups, and someone was like, hey, did you guys catch this airfare to Seychelles? There's a airfare that's hot right now. For those who don't know what an airfare is when an airline will technically make a mistake when it comes to their pricing for a particular flight to a place. So for instance, they may leave out a zero, a whole zero, right? That changes the price significantly, right? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
like that flight that was going to be 3,500 is 350 now, right? You better jump on it. So
Right.
that's what we talk about when we talk about airfares. That's what we mean. Like in these things do happen. So I just want to make sure I said that to make sure that you all that are listening are just aware that these things exist and to be vigilant because they have different websites that are dedicated to airfares that post airfares that show up, whether it be different airlines, different locations. It's not always going to be the location you're necessarily looking to go to at that particular time, but it might be. And so I just wanted to put that out there just so y'all can be up on some game. When y'all, think about traveling in the future, just know that these things exist out there and to be vigilant and looking for those opportunities because this was an opportunity. I was an opportunist in this situation when I went to Seychelles. Had no plans of going, but when I saw that price, I couldn't help myself. So I did want to start with that. And then I'll go into some of the more specifics around the cost and everything, because I think that'll help some people potentially too. So at least at that time, again, it was January. I was going around my birthday. And so I was looking up flights and from SFO, flights to the Seychelles were going for about 3,400, right? For economy.
Economy.
So that's a reason, right? Why it's like one of those places, like for instance, like for those who aren't super familiar with Seychelles, like you may have seen some of the pictures on Instagram and just see how it's so beautiful, but it is one of those locations where people tend to go for honeymoons or anniversary celebrations. So it's one of those places that have been tabbed for that specifically. I was completely unorthodox in the fact that I went solo dolo, and people don't typically do that. But, I say it to say it was a great experience. I'll get more into that a little bit later. But the cost, so that's how much it would typically be leaving from San Francisco. I was able to find a flight out of New York, and that's where the airfare was anyway. Like it was like New York to Seychelles. It actually started at $350. But the thing about airfares is it's really interesting. They can gradually scale themselves back up to the original price. So like depending on where you catch it, that can determine how much you pay for that ticket, if that makes any sense. So there were people who caught that airfare at $350. There were some people who caught it at $450. There were some people that caught it at $740. That was me. I caught it at $740. Then there were people who then after that, it got up to like 1,200. And it's cheaper to fly to Seychelles from New York than it is from San Francisco. So about like 1,600, I think, was pretty common, just like the normal price anyway. So I thought 740 was still worth going and getting that flight because the flight to New York was under 200 round trip. So I just added that on. It was like still under 1,000. So I was like, yeah, this is definitely worth it. And so I flew Kenya Airways. And we can talk about that a little bit too, because that was just like, for me, it felt like I was just like, it was Black excellence, right? Like I was on an African-based airline, and all the cabin crew, the pilot, everybody was, looked like me. You know what I'm saying? And to me, that was just really empowering, even just getting there, right? And like having that experience. I had a great experience on Kenya Airways. They were friendly. And it was great. Like this was before COVID was really like being talked about. But I think because of the timing, a lot of people go on vacation during the holidays, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, then they're back to work, right? When January, like everybody's like pushing forward. I was unemployed, just remembering I was unemployed at the time. So that was another reason I said I might as well jump on this. I don't have anything else to do. I was interviewing at the time, but I was at a good point with the companies I was interviewing with where I was going to have to wait a little bit anyway. I was like at, that point of the process. So I was just like, I might as well go on ahead and get this trip in. So
Mhm.
so yeah, I went on ahead and flew Kenya Airways, had a layover in Kenya actually. So that was my first time going to Kenya. I had an 11 and a half hour layover. So I was able to leave the airport and go to Giraffe Center. But anyone who's familiar with Kenya knows that the traffic is crazy. It is terrible. Like the traffic, like I haven't seen traffic, and I've been all over the world. Haven't seen traffic like Nairobi traffic hit different.
The
So
New York, woo! I don't know if I want to go now.
yeah, New York is fine, but Nairobi, I'm trying to tell you, it hit
Mm,
different.
mm,
Especially before the pandemic. I was just there recently and it was like, ooh, like this is actually better, but it's still like really bad.
right.
But no, with Seychelles, the food was good, and like on my flight, I flew economy. I had a whole row to myself all the way to Seychelles, even though I had a layover and had to switch planes and get on another plane and do that on
Mhm.
the way back. I had my own row all the way to Seychelles and all the way back to America,
Nice.
which was
Nice.
just crazy. But I think it was due to the demand not being super high. People did their traveling. They had just finished doing a lot of heavy traveling. So it wasn't a lot of that going on, which was
Mhm.
conducive to me being able to naturally social distance, even at the time, we weren't talking about it. But anyway, um, when you arrive in Seychelles, there are actually two. So there are three main islands, right? There's
Mm.
Mahi, there's Praslin. It's spelled Praslin. I was mispronouncing it, like calling it Praslin. It's actually Praslin. The S is
Okay.
silent.
Okay.
And then there's Ladigue. And so each of those islands has a different feel, but those are three main islands. But Seychelles has many more islands than that. You won't see them all in one trip. But
Well, let's talk about those three islands real quick. What is you said they have different feels or different vibes. So for
yeah,
those folks who do not know what continent or where exactly is Seychelles exactly for those folks who ain't never heard of this country.
yeah. Seychelles is actually in Africa. You know,
Okay.
it's in Africa. It's off. It's not on the mainland, but it's
Hmm.
off the side of, and it's on the east. In East Africa, it's an island off Africa. Another island that's similar to that, that's like not super far from Seychelles, is Mauritius. But a lot of people see Seychelles, they see the pictures, they see people go to Seychelles or, on Instagram or see stuff on the internet and don't necessarily associate it with Africa, right? Just because
Hmm.
I don't know if it's that they think it's too beautiful to be in there. I don't know what it is or why people,
Right.
you know, tend to see it that way. But that was another intent. And for me, like I'm really into intentional travel.
Hmm.
And so for me, when I go places, it usually is really intentional, whether it be that I'm like trying to like share a certain experience, being on Instagram and realizing that the things that I post aren't just for me, but there's like an audience consuming this content and perceiving different things based on the way that I'm telling the story. I try to be really responsible with that story and the storytelling of
Hmm.
it. And so, for instance, with Seychelles, it's a place I didn't realize existed, until like 2, 3 years ago, right? I had never heard of Seychelles, saw pictures, fell in love, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do that. I'm gonna have to wait for a honeymoon, anniversary, whatever, for that to happen. But then that opportunity opened itself up. And so, yeah, it's in Africa. And part of what I wanted to do was to show this is another side of Africa. This may be the Africa that you don't get to see on the news or that you don't hear about in passing when people talk about Africa. We're used to
Hmm.
hearing about feed the children. We're used to hearing about, people not having the infrastructure to do this or infrastructure to do that. And all this different stuff, but there's so much more to it, and the continent is so diverse. And I think Seychelles is a good representation of that. And I wanted to be sure to do my part in sharing that narrative.
So what about those three islands, the main islands? May you describe what the vibe is, what the culture is of those three islands, just so our folks can get a idea of what the difference is and why to go to each one?
Yes, exactly. So, sure. So the main island is Mahi. That is the main island of the Seychelles, and the capital is Victoria. One interesting fun fact about that is that Victoria is actually the smallest capital in the world, and
Mm.
so that's one fun fact. But yeah, like Mahi is like it's I would say typical like just more of like a like has like a bigger kind of like metropolitan feel to it. It's not really metropolitan because like when I think of that, I think of like New York, and you won't see skyscrapers and stuff like that, but it's the closest thing to that, if that makes sense, where you'll
Mhm.
see you know, it's the largest of the three main islands. And so for instance, where while in Ladigue, like there aren't any cars on Ladigue at all. So like you have to bike or walk. And I did that. I basically biked. That's really common. Like everybody hops on a bike. You know, I rented a bike, went around the whole island, and you know, it was cool. But that's very different from like Mahi, where it's like kind of like if you were any other place, like you need to call a taxi or whatever,
Mhm.
get you from point A to point B. So I would say that that's like the kind of feel of Mahi is it's like kind of more. It doesn't feel as cultural unless you're going to certain places. Like they are known for their market that's like in Victoria, and that's where you can see people like bringing in fresh fish and chopping it up, and people selling fruit and different things like that. But kind of outside of that, it's you know pretty typical. And but there are some things to see in Mahi, like they are known for that botanical garden, which is really nice. And I went there, and they actually have an area within the botanical garden where they have these like giant tortoises. And that's another thing that Seychelles is known for. They're known for their giant tortoises, and there's a breed of tortoise that they have that only exists in the Seychelles and in Ecuador. It's the same
Mm.
breed. I forgot what it's called. It starts with an A, Alhambra, something like that, something similar to that, where they have that breed of that species of tortoise that can't be found anywhere else. But they have them on the in the botanical garden, and so you can actually interact with them. You can go in and feed them and whatnot, and do stuff like that. And I did that, so that was fun. But I would say moving on to the next island, like gradually getting smaller. The next smallest of the three is Pralin.
Mhm.
That island is a little bit more approachable when it comes to just like self navigation, right? Like that was a place I didn't feel like I needed to necessarily call a Uber every 2 seconds or like, you know, call just figure out how to get around. There, I was a lot more comfortable walking and using even their public transportation, which I rarely do when I'm abroad because I usually don't trust myself figuring out their system, and I don't want to get stranded somewhere and then can't speak the language. And then, you know, I just like, you know, I freak out about that kind of stuff, but I felt comfortable doing it there.
Mhm.
Now, I will say in the Seychelles, they tend to speak multiple languages, first being Creole.
Mm.
And then I had a really interesting experience actually in Prowling, where there's like this they have all throughout the Seychelles they have like these takeaway restaurants, right?
Mhm.
Where you go there, you can sometimes you can actually sit down and eat at a takeaway restaurant, but a lot of times it's just like you know you get it and you go. There was a takeaway restaurant that you could actually sit down and eat in, and that I went to. And that place just like I don't know what it was like. Well, I know what it was. The food was amazing. That's what it was. The fish that I had there was literally the best fish I have ever tasted. And I'll go on record saying that. Best fish ever. Like they don't serve this in America.
They don't- do you know what type of fish it is by chance, or
Do.
how they prepare it?
Yes, I do. It's actually white snapper. And so it's
Mm.
interesting. It was a catch of the day
Mhm.
type of thing. And he had different options for me. He said, "Oh, okay, this is a catch of the day. We have white snapper." Then he named two other ones that I was like, I'm not familiar with that at all. It was some sort of name, probably means something, but I just don't know. But I wasn't familiar at all. So I was like, well, white snapper, I know I heard a red snapper, but I have never heard a white snapper. But that was the closest to something that I was familiar with. So I went on ahead and chose that as my option. And I'm glad I did, because man, when I tell you, like, they grill their fish. And they call it barbecue fish. It's not like they using barbecue sauce like, you know, like we think it, but they call it, it's basically grilled fish, but they call it barbecue fish there. And they have the guy that prepares it. It's a special like guy that comes in, and it usually happens in the evenings, where at least at that particular place, he would come in at about 5-6 o'clock. He'd bring in all the fish that they had caught that day. So, you know, you got this fresh fish, right? It's fresh. And so he was called the fish master. He was the fish master. And they were like, "Oh, we got to wait on the fish master." And I was like, you know what? Just because he got that special title, I'll sit here and wait however long it's going to take him to prepare. However long it's going to take him to hook this bad boy up, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Fish master. Yeah. All right. Well, let's see what you got, fish master. I'm only here one time, so let's do that. Whatever that is.
Right. Yeah. And I recorded the experience. Like, I was talking to him, I was asking him what was in it and stuff like that. And he was telling me he was mixing it all together, all the different sauces, and putting it on there and moving on, doing somebody else's. He never like left it on there too long. Like, he knew exactly like what to do and when. Like, you could tell dude was just a pro at it. And so that was one of the most memorable experiences I had on that island, I would say. But I would say also, like I said, you know, it was more accessible to me in terms of just like feeling comfortable getting around, like, and hopping on that, you know, public bus, right? And so I waited at the bus stop with the locals. It kind of felt cool just like being able to do that. And also considering the fact I was solo, it just kind of felt like I was kind of proud of myself being willing to step out of my comfort zone in that situation. And, you know, I went on there and I took the public transportation, a bus, to the national park that's that's on the island, where they're known for a nut called the coco de mer, and it's actually the world's largest nut. And it grows from these trees. And they tell you, because they're all over, like, it looks like a rainforest, right? Like when you're in the actually like in there. And they have to give you like this briefing, because these trees are just like towering, and you know, they have palm leaves or whatnot, but you'll see like a huge like nut that's like this. You know what I'm saying? All the way up. Can you just imagine those drop, like just like other fruit and different things, those drop from the trees just like anything else. So can you imagine sitting right up underneath that? Like, you'll be out. Like, it's not even a question. It's just gonna be like, he lived a good life. You know, it won't be a question of what we can do. It's just like he lived a good life. But you know, so that was definitely one of the best things to do in Prowling. But they also are known for their different beaches as well. Although the best beaches are in Ladigue. We'll get to that. But they do have some pretty solid beaches. Like Grand Anse. Anse just means beach. And they have a few others that are notable. I remember having a not so enjoyable experience just being on my way to one of the beaches, and basically feeling like I was like kind of dropped off somewhere, and then like it was like a dead end. Like, I didn't see any other buses. I was the only one on the bus at that point, got off and didn't see anyone. And it wasn't clear where the beach was. I was pointed in a direction that didn't feel right. And I was just like, am I like stranded out here? What's going on? Wi-Fi was acting up. It was a mess, but I got back. A bus did come and, took me back. It was what it was. But all in all, that was like, those types of things happen, whether you're traveling solo or with people. And, I'm the type of person, I feel like at this point, being a seasoned traveler, you have to be kind of aware of different things and just knowing that things can happen. Not everything is going to be perfect. Like before you even leave, just knowing, like, just kind of expecting something unexpected to happen and to be okay with that, right? And to not panic, to not freak out, but to just embrace that as part of the experience and part of your story that you'll then be able to tell so that someone else doesn't make the same mistake later. But
Preach. Now let me ask you this though. Do we need any visas or vaccinations or anything like that?
no, to both. I was able to just up and go to the Seychelles. And I think technically there is a visa, and I forgot what it's called, but it's like there's nothing on your end that you need to like prepare for or do. They just like, as a part of like the stamp, like they go ahead and do it. And it's just technically, I think there is a visa, but it's not like, for our purposes, there's no like requirements.
Cool. So it's a lot to do in Seychelles. We know it's beautiful. Now, is there anything you disliked about it?
Man, I would say one thing, that is that it is not for the budget traveler. Now, I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna keep it real, right? That's what we on here to do. I'm gonna keep it real and
Yeah,
let you
please.
know that Seychelles. If you like, oh, I want to go to the Seychelles real quick. I want to take me a budget trip. Ooh, good luck, bro. Good luck, sis, because it's gonna be a little bit of a challenge. And I can speak as someone who was unemployed when I went. Like, who goes to Seychelles unemployed? You know what I'm saying? Like, I did it. And I'll let you know, like, an example is around like transportation is expensive. I was doing my own research as I normally would do, and people were recommending to like rent a car. I wasn't personally comfortable with that because they do drive on the opposite side of the road, and I am not well versed in that. Now, I've driven in Mexico, I've driven in Canada, but when it comes to other places that are a little bit a little bit different, I'm not quite at that level of confidence with that kind of energy yet. But it's all good. You got to do what you got to do, and I was prepared to have to pay. At least I knew that transportation was expensive, so I was prepared for that. But like a cab from the airport to where I was going one way was $80, and the island ain't that big.
Damn.
So I'm just giving you, a sense. And they use Seychelles rupee. That's the currency, Seychelles rupee.
Okay.
And so that it was 80 USD though, the equivalent. I can't remember how many rupee that was, but I just know it was like $80 USD that it translated into. But yeah, that's one thing. They aren't a cheap, it's not a cheap destination. Resorts and everything, like hotels, all of that is upward of 200, but can get, we can get into the Four Seasons. Like they have two, I believe, Four Seasons hotels that start out at like 800 a night. Now, obviously, you don't have to stay there, but they have like, but even like the Hiltons and just like places that we would typically stay when we go on vacation, other places that might be like 130 or something like that. Like those places are like starting at 450. So that's a big shift for me. And like, I stayed in, the first night I did stay in a 5-star hotel because I knew that I always have to, even if I'm trying to do like a hostel or an Airbnb here and there that's not really that like high class, I gotta have one night where I show out a little bit.
It's all right.
So I knew I was gonna be the most tired after the long voyage to the Seychelles. So I wanted that first day to really be like living in luxury and just like real comfortable. And I was glad that I planned it that way because I stayed in a mix of accommodations. I stayed at a place called Savoy Seychelles Resorts. That was the 5-star hotel, and breakfast was included. It was amazing. It was so beautiful, and it's connected to the Bouvelon beach. And so like you
Mhm.
can just keep walking out, and then it's like the water, and it's really one I would recommend for anyone thinking about going to the Seychelles. But after that, I moved to a different part of the island, still on Mahe, and I was in an Airbnb that I kind of regretted staying in, honestly, because it was so far out from everything. It wasn't like close to anything, and it was hard for me. I literally could not find anything to eat while I stayed there. Like
Oh.
people kept telling me, they were pointing me in different directions. I don't know if they were doing, like, they were intentionally misguiding me because they knew I was a foreigner, but I was walking so far in one direction, and I'm like, there's no way that there's a restaurant down here. So I turned around, and it was starting to get dark. So I was more focused on getting home before it got dark than I was on eating. I'm like, we gonna swallow our spit tonight, and we gonna wake up alive. You hear me?
Yeah, and you know what? Back in college, that remember my college days. If I was hungry, broke college students, you know the game. Uh, it ain't had no food at the moment, what have you. It's either just swallow your spit or go to sleep. So I chose to go to sleep, and that was kind of like me.
I know what you're
that
talking
was kind of
about.
like yeah, that was kind of like me eating for the night. Like, well, I ain't got nothing to eat right now, so I'm gonna have to just go ahead and go to sleep. We're gonna have to call it a night, and we're gonna start this again
Exactly.
tomorrow. See, try our luck there. But yeah, man, it's a lot to do in Seychelles. I'm glad that we talked about it. I haven't even heard about it until you brought it up. So I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners probably didn't know about it neither. But now we do got to start wrapping things up. We got to hit the gift shop, get some souvenirs before we head back home. But before we do that, and as we hit these gift shops, any last things you would like to talk about before we hit this flight back home?
I would say that, and I didn't touch on this, and I'll just touch on it real quickly. The last island, Ladigue, was my favorite by far. And if there's anything that I do recommend that you do, if you can't do anything else, spend time in Ladigue. Like I
Mhm.
mentioned briefly, you can walk the whole island. They actually don't have any vehicles. It's all biking and walking, but it's not like, it's the smallest of the three main islands. And it's such a chill vibe. It's like everybody's like, it's on the beach. It feels like everywhere is the beach anyway. So it kind
Right.
of has that slow pace, like not too much going on, nothing to be worried about. And I will say, in terms of safety, the Seychelles, I felt completely safe everywhere, regardless of whether I was in Mahi, except for, I mean, I was just talking about the experience where I was in the Airbnb, but that's kind of real different when you're out somewhere and it's starting to get dark. Now, anywhere, you got to kind of use common sense, especially when you're somewhere that's foreign to you. But I will
Yep.
say, in general, during the day, I felt completely comfortable everywhere. But you have to check out Ladigue, and you have to hit up clear water, or sorry, crystal water kayaks, which is where,
Mhm.
if you've seen it on Instagram, that's where they have those clear kayaks that you see different people on, and they're out there in the water, and they by themselves, and they living their best life. And yeah, that's where you want to go. So I would hit them up. You can hit them up on IG and follow them. So just to keep it top of mind, I know a lot of people aren't traveling right now, but at least that'll kind of keep it in your mind if you're really considering going to the Seychelles seriously.
Much appreciated. So if you don't have Seychelles on your list, put it on your list and put it on there quick. You could do a variety of things. Now, let me tell you this right now, it's not for you budget travelers, and I'm talking to myself as well. So when you want to go to Seychelles, you gotta bring a couple coins. And
That's right.
you can go solo. There's nothing wrong with going solo, but it is known for like honeymoons and anniversaries and
Hmm.
romantic. So, not only do you have to have a little bread, make sure you got you a cool little partner to go with as well, and you should have a great time. And then, you know what? Try different things, try the different foods. It's a lot going on. So put Seychelles on. It's in East Africa, the island off of East Africa. We learning something. We learning. So And it got, many islands or what have you, but the three main ones is probably the ones you will need to go to. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we do have to catch this flight back home. And as we are flying back, Daniel, we have one last segment for you. And I'm going to ask you a list of questions, and you are to answer them as quickly as possible. So speed is what we care about on this. And to make it even more interesting, you can only answer with one word answers. So no sentences, no backstories, but just keep it short and sweet, and we'll go from there. You got it?
Yep.
Cool. So let me go ahead. I'm ready. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Let's do it. All right. So first question. What is your favorite airline?
Delta.
What is your favorite hotel?
Hilton.
What is your favorite cruise line?
None.
What is your favorite state?
California.
What is your favorite country?
Kenya.
What is your favorite hotel booking site?
Airbnb.
What is your favorite flight booking site or app?
Google Flights.
What is one thing that Daniel Mann must bring on all of his trips?
Universal charger.
That's a good one. Where do you want to go next?
Costa Rica.
What other state would you live in?
New York.
What other country would you live in?
Czech Republic.
Now, last question. What is your favorite travel podcast?
The Global Travel Podcast.
Good answer. Much appreciated, Daniel, man. Hey, thank you so much, brother, for stopping by, showing us a lot of good love and travel knowledge that you got. Much appreciated.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you for having me.
Of course, bro. And then to all my travelers, listeners, followers out there, you know what time of day it is. We are approaching our home airport, so the plane is now descending. So I need you back into your seats, buckle up, trays up in the seats in an upright position. But before we land, Daniel, if you can give our audience, our listeners, one last piece of travel advice, what would that be?
Be brave, be bold, and just do it. A lot of times you'll, have group trips planned and the numbers start to whittle down, and then you get a little timid or you get a little shy and say, oh, I gotta wait. Tomorrow isn't promised. If anything, 2020 should have taught us is that. And so going forward into the new year, as we approach it, I would say to live with no regrets and book that flight.
Well said. Much appreciated. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys got a lot of good value, get a lot of good knowledge. Also, Daniel, I'm also put your IG information in the description or on the screen so folks can follow you. If you guys got some questions, pick his brain. He is the person to ask. So he's a wealth of travel knowledge. And then let's see. I think that's all that I have for that. And then now, we are safely landed, ladies and gentlemen. You can unbuckle your seatbelts, grab your belongings, and exit the cabin. Thank you for flying here with us at the Global Travel Podcast, and we'll see you guys on our next trip. If you would like to be a guest on our show and tell us about your travel experiences, then leave us a comment in the comment section below so we can reach out to you. Also, if you have any countries, states, or cities that you'd like us to review, please let us know so we can plan a trip there. Lastly, if you got some good value today and liked our podcast, please hit the like button and click subscribe so you can travel with us again next time. So subscribe right now because you don't want to miss the next trip. With that being said, over and out.